configuring and deploying our main application. So before we can actually deploy the application, there are some things that are very specific to your application, to the environment of the application, where environment variables become quite handy. So what we can do first is we'll go ahead and change the app.js. Instead of being hard-coded to connect to the local database for MongoDB, we'll assume that Node.js, to actually pull in environment variables in Node.js, you just grab the global process object environment and the name environment variable you're looking for. So ours is dev env. And this is handy because now we can say that if we want to run the app locally, all we have to do is just set environment variable before we run Node to set dev env to true. And then that'll connect to local database and the application run in kind of a dev mode. Otherwise, we can connect to the special Mongo lab connection string, and we'll grab this. And what we can do is we can, so we see we have chirp app here, and that should just create the chirp app. I'm actually forgot if this is a database name or if that's, I think that's the collection name. We'll see, we'll try that. I thought before I added something else here, but that's all right. Okay, so that'll connect us to the MongoDB database on the server, and the cloud, if you will. And now when we launch Azure websites, dev env will not be declared and will automatically default to the cloud version because on the Azure website there will be no MongoDB database. Now in Azure websites we can also set parameters for our environment variables. One good practice is don't put the connection string for your MongoDB database in source control, because if you ever want to open source your thing, you'll have your credentials right in the application. For the sake of brevity, we're going to just go ahead and throw it in there. But what you really should do is just do an environment variable, set that up, and put the environment variable on your Azure website and put it on your local, but just keep it out of the source so that when you do push and you share the code around, you don't have those keys just floating around in there. Okay. So I set up the environment variable, and now what I need to do is create an Azure website. And I did do that, but we do need to configure it for deploying our apps. So we'll call this chirp Azure here. If we go in, we'll do a setup deployment from source control right here. And it's really easy. So there's a few options you have. You have VS Online, which is Microsoft's own ALM, Application Lifecycle Management tool. You have GitHub, Dropbox, Bitbucket, a few things. We're just going to use a local Git repository, which is just really just a Git server that's set up on our Azure website, and we'll just add it as a remote. So we'll grab our Git URL. We're going to go to, actually, I think I should copy out, since we're already in a Git repository. Actually, I got this here. I don't really, oh yeah, I think I copied this over. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm in the right directory before I, okay, so this was chirp app. Okay, so I got to copy that out. So I'm going to go into GitHub, I'm going to grab this, copy it out. I'm going to put it somewhere else just because we shouldn't really put a Git repository in the Git repository. Inception Git, that's a no-no. Okay, so we'll cd into that. I think I need a Git shell because Git's not, yeah, it's not on this one. That's fine. So grab a Git shell. Oh no.
Oh no, is your mouse not working anymore?
Oh, there it goes. Okay, I thought it died. I was like, this is great. Okay, here, we'll cd into that directory, git init, and we'll just initialize this as an empty repo. We'll do git add. Actually, I'm going to do a notepad git ignore. So I don't, and if you're not familiar with Git, that just means I want you to avoid installing or including anything in node module. Actually, I believe it's node modules. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. And then we'll do a git add, which adds everything in the current directory. We'll do a git commit, initial commit. So now we saved it to a local repository, and we see that we only added the stuff that's not in the node modules folder. And then we'll do a git remote add Azure. Is it git add? Yeah, git remote add Azure, and then here. Oh. So if we go back to Azure website, it'll give us the git URL link. We got to copy that, paste it back in here. Okay, so now we have the remote. And so now if I do a git push Azure master, it'll push the Azure branch, or the master branch of the Azure remote. And what you'll see here is as this starts to go, now you might be asked to set your source control credentials too. I'll go back and show you how to do that if you do this yourself for the first time. It didn't ask because it's not my first time doing it. So kudosync.net is an open source PaaS platform that handles deployments of PHP, Python, and NodeJS applications, as well as .NET. And it copies all the files over, and then it starts to do the installation. So because it detects it's a Node.js application, it detects that you have a package JSON, and it goes in and installs all the stuff manually. You might see sometimes that there's one of the things that kind of you might hit a hiccup is with any native modules. If you notice that we used a bcrypt Node.js because it's a vanilla JS module, but it'll go through here, and a lot of times those errors are pretty benign because you'll just fall back to vanilla JavaScript. And so now we see it, we finished successfully when deployment was successful. So the output that we saw here is actually going to match the output. The output that we saw on the command line will be the same output that you see when we run the deployment command. So we can actually see what happened, and we can see how we installed everything, and everything was, everything was good, and we're all great. And now, if nothing went wrong, we should be able to go ahead and launch our site. And now, if you run under the free mode, you'll see that there's like a small delay in your application because if it's sleeping, or if you haven't touched the application maybe in like 20 minutes or something like that, it'll go to sleep and it'll just be turned off until you touch it again. There's also features like always on, which always keep your website on, but those are standard website features which cost money, but this is free and it's easy to do. And if you want to upgrade, you can just go to scale, and you could just click, hey, I want to run free, shared, basic, or standard. In my case, I'm running standard, but I really should just be running free. And then you could actually modify the instance count. So I guess we didn't really talk too much about what Azure Websites is, but it's a platform that is kind of an elastic web hosting platform. It has Heroku-style deployments, so you do the git push, and you're able to scale with the power of all the Azure machines all around the world, which is really awesome. And as your demand gets up, it'll automatically spin more instances. And as your demand goes down, it'll automatically scale down those instances. You could do things like based on schedule, or you could do things based on CPU time, or a few things like that. So it's really, really flexible. And it's really easy to host a website, which is really awesome. Okay, so now if we go back to our app, we'll see that we have our chirp application, our chirp feed, which is completely empty, and it's really sad. There's no chirps, so there's nothing in there.
I guess you have to go and create some chirps.
So we have to go chirp. So let's go and test to see if everything works. We'll go ahead and do a registration. We'll click register. I'll say Edward. I'll put in my password. Great. So now I'm signed in, and now I can cheat. You should be able to sign in on this website too and create your own account and see that you can cheat as well.
Yeah, I just posted something, and I can see yours.
Nice, I'm not alone. But it's funny because I have we don't have the sessions fully implemented.
Yeah.
So I can't.
If you say something, because of the way that we're doing queries, that'll refresh the feed. So I guess if you want to stay logged in, the only way to see new ones is by posting something, which is, maybe unfortunate.
But that's cool because it really encourages you to hey, everybody chirp right now.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, and just go back to Azure Websites. If you want to deploy if it's your first time deploying an Azure website, especially through Git, it's great because they'll actually walk you through the steps of how to add an Azure remote, how to add credentials, and things like that as you're setting it up. So if you're looking for resources on that, you can actually get that by simply trying it out yourself in Azure websites.
Yep. Now, what's also cool is that we can go and jump into our Mongo Lab account, and right from the browser, we can actually look at our documents and see all the users that have signed up and all the cheats that are happening right through the backend. So if you just go right into your marketplace, you see Chirp app here, and what we'll do is we'll just click, we won't even need to click on that. We can actually just click this little manage link here, and right down there. And what it'll do, it'll just pop open a new window, and it'll bring us to Mongo Lab dashboard, which is it's not actually hosted in Azure. This is actually from mongolab.com, and it'll actually show us the post and the users. So we see that we have 3 users. There's 3, so someone else signed in too. Let's see. M. Vasquez and a couple other Chad. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 users. That's cool. So we have people signing in. Remember that we don't store passwords, so we just have hashes. So we have no idea what these passwords are, and that's a really good security practice, anyways. And we have our post, and we can look at, we have 8 posts here, and we could see, hey, here's a new cheap, right now, hey, from El Centro, California, hey, from San Diego. So we got someone in California now. We're in San Francisco, so well, not right now, but we're in Seattle now. Oh, we have Mark in Seattle too. See that?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So everything's kind of flowing right into the database, and everybody's authenticated in. And if we actually cheap something new, we should see more posts coming in. And see, now we have all these things, which is really cool. So now we've been able to launch our main application to the cloud. It's scalable because all we have to do really is just scale up Azure websites. So if 1,000 people, 100 people, 100,000 people, I don't know how many high, I don't know how far we can get it, because scalability works, but you also have to develop your application to do that as well. So one of the things is like session caches. We're not backplaning servers, so if we have more than one Azure website running, or more than one instance, that session will be local to that server, which it holds that state. So if you're going to do something more advanced, one of the things you could look at is like Redis to connect all those sessions together in one place, so that you can scale to however many applications, express instances we need, and then you can theoretically handle a very large amount of people to the scale of what MongoDB and Redis will give you. But for right now, it's still pretty beta, but it works, and it works pretty well. Cool. So we've deployed, we've created a backend, or we've created
the front end.
The front end.
We've created the back end. We've tied the two together, and now we've deployed our site. So now it's actually live.
So yeah, so now we did a continuous integration. Okay, so now we're good. I'm just looking through my slides again. So now the last thing I guess we can just chat about is, what are some other, like, just, I don't know, some cool, like, mean tricks we can do to make our lives easier?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is, right now, or today, we built out this entire mean app from scratch. We actually had to go through and install everything and build the entire app ourselves. But there are actually a lot of pretty great generators that will scaffold out a really well-designed, sort of well-architected mean app for you. So there are 2 that I'd want to talk about in terms of scaffolding tools, and one is mean.io. So as it says, mean.io is a fun and friendly JavaScript full stack for your next web application. And as you can see here, you can actually install the mean.io scaffolding tool straight from NPM. Mm-hmm. There's also Yeoman, which is a great generator for multiple types of apps, not just mean apps.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there really is a lot, and you can also install Yeoman through NPM. So NPM is just a really wonderful resource if you're working with Node at all. And there are great generators. There's a wide range of mean generators. There's one I like called Angular Full Stack, and I also found one called Generator-Mean Stack. Generator-mean-stack, and you can search for a lot of other great generators for you to scaffold out an Angular application. A lot of them will even scaffold out the authentication piece for you, which is as you saw today, maybe a little bit difficult to manage.
Yeah, So it takes care of all those basics, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And in addition, NPM, as we talked about before, just has so many different packages that are handy for you to use. We've only used that Passport piece, or we've only used the local authentication piece of Passport. But Passport, that module that we use to do authentication, also handles pretty much any authentication strategy.
Yeah, that's Facebook on there.
Facebook, I think Twitter, just OpenID.
A few others.
Google's,
GitHub,
I think
Microsoft account too.
Microsoft, yeah, pretty much everyone under the sun. They'll help you authenticate against, and I think they're probably the most popular authentication strategy used with the mean stack. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
There are some other things that we want to talk about. So, for instance, we use Azure websites to host our mean website. But if you want to, but if there's a bit more that you want to do, if you really want to spin it up using a Linux server, or there's things that you want to customize, there's also Bitnami is a great resource for you to get the VMs that are ready for you to use in the cloud as sort of like a mean VM. And once you actually connect this with your Azure account, you can. I'm not connected in right now, but you can actually just go in and you can click a link and it'll just start provisioning out that VM for you. So
nice.
It's really wonderful.
Does it do anything with Docker?
I don't think this one in particular does, but Bitnami, in addition to mean, of course, has just a bunch of really awesome images that you can use for whatever your need is. So you could just scaffold out an environment without having to build your own custom VM image.
Oh, okay.
So that's really cool. And one last thing that I wanted us to talk about are the Node.js tools for Visual Studio. So today, Steven and I were using Sublime Text to basically, very simple, lightweight text editor with some nice, syntax highlighting tools to develop our app. But the Node.js tools for Visual Studio are also incredibly nice, and you can download them here at just nodejstools.codeplex.com. So
it's open source, right?
Yeah, it's open source.
Extension.
Yes, the extension.
Yeah.
I didn't know what you meant for a second. Yeah, but it's a really great and quite powerful Node.js IDE. It has IntelliSense features for you, which is really great to work with when you're doing Node.js, and you can even add breakpoints and things like that. And it just makes for pretty wonderful and easy debugging.
Yeah, the debugging experience is a little better there because you can actually just put a breakpoint. The only way to do debugging, the easiest way without Visual Studio really is to download Node Inspector and then run a Chrome debugger on the Node Inspector client. It's actually not that really good of an experience, but VS does bring that together, which is quite nice.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend checking that out, especially if you're already a Visual Studio user. Any other things that
I can think of? There's a couple of things so npm.js, Node package manager, which is I hang out there all the time. There's a lot of cool packages that just come through. A couple of things that you might want to look into are for example, and you could just browse npmjs.org and go through a bunch of things, but a couple that you might want to look into. One of the things is what is it?
Grunt?
Yeah, Grunt, which is great for a task runner. So if you want to run your test, or say that you want to lint your JavaScript on your server or on your front end with hey, I want to make sure I didn't drop a semicolon, or I want to make sure I didn't do a couple of things, it'll do that, and it can actually watch those things. Other things are Mocha, which is my favorite unit test framework for Node. There's a few, but this one's one of the most popular ones. There's also Protractor, which I believe just comes with. Where do you find Protractor from? Is it Bower or NPM or?
So you can get it just along with Angular.
Yeah.
And you can also download it here. So Protractor, I think we touched on it briefly before. It's basically a really great test suite especially for that front end Angular piece.
Yeah.
So you can run tests to make sure that your code is displaying exactly how you want it to, or fits within a certain pattern. So we just wanted to bring you guys a lot of resources that'll help you go beyond just this simple jumpstart. Because at the end of the day, we created a simple application that doesn't really do any of that testing piece or any heavy lifting. But if you do want to build a robust application on the mean stack, you definitely can. And there are a lot of resources out there for you, whether it's scaffolding out an application or testing frameworks, or host entire VMs that you can use.
We blew through about 4 or 5 huge concepts. So we did data binding on the front end, as well as partials, directives. We didn't even talk about custom directives in Angular. You have things on the back end like middleware for Express, node packages, doing authentication. And we did how to apply routers and how to apply middleware to certain APIs, but not others. And on the front end, again, we bounded everything up together. We deployed it to the cloud. But we also had a few other MVAs. So this MVA is kind of like a capstone or maybe a precursor to a lot of other MVAs that we have that relate to the main stack. So we have MongoDB MVA, which I did with Rami. Stacy and Rami as well did the
Node.
Yeah, the Node. They did the Node and Express one. Did that one cover Angular?
No, but Stacy did a separate one with Christopher that covered Angular more specifically.
Great, and then they have an Angular one too. So we really have specific MVAs which kind of go deeper on each of these stacks. For example, MongoDB, we never even talked about embedded documents or any of those things, which are really some of the big features of Mongo. Just because there's so many concepts coming together, we don't want to overwhelm. But if you're more interested in getting into more complex things to create really awesome mean applications, I would totally recommend checking those out, as well as all the resources that we placed on the slides. So I think we've talked our way out of basically everything. We have the app running. Everybody's kind of happy. We're cheaping along. And unless you have anything else, Helen, I think we can sign our guest out.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us all today.
Yeah, thanks for signing on. And at the end of this MVA, there's going to be a quick survey. So if you don't mind filling that out to give us some feedback about our MVA and myself and Helen and how good of a job or how bad of a job we might have done. JK, no, but yeah. So other than that, thanks for signing on. Thank you for joining us, and we really do appreciate for you guys watching. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.